we have something interesting to talk about that is mostly sparked by a recent game, Street Fighter 6, which is only like what, 2 years old, and the slew of versus games coming out very soon here. There's a lot of debate online about motion inputs and the war on them, right? Are developers wanting to make motion inputs antiquated, make motion inputs an irrelevant feature of the past that no longer needs to or has to exist in modern fighting games. The reason why I have these games up, 2XKO, Invincible Versus, Hunter x Hunter, and lastly, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, is because we are getting a slew of new tag fighters, along with just getting a new mainline Street Fighter game 2 years ago. We got Street Fighter 6, which is the first Street Fighter game, the first mainline Street Fighter game at least, to have simple inputs. Molly chose to lay up here anyway. At least she's not laying on the laptop. Simple inputs. Easy inputs. And by easy inputs, I mean there's an actual full mode called Modern Controls where you no longer need to use motion inputs to play the video game. Now, I like the idea of Modern. I think there are some hindrances with Modern, like the number of charge moves being hindered, losing access to some number of normals, the game being built around Modern, built from the ground up with Modern in mind, and then Classic being tacked on at the end. And the speed of supers in the game, knowing that Modern is a thing, and one button DP reactions, one button super and level 3 reactions will be a thing when playing against Modern players. Now, it's not something you have to worry about too much with Classic, but all of those factors lead Modern in the hands of an amazing player to feel extremely overpowered. Even with the damage fall off, even with the damage drop, I think it's like a full 20% damage cut. It feels impossible to open up a player in Modern. Impossible. Now, what I was going to get at here is that you see these 4 main fighting games that are going to be coming out after Street Fighter 6, after the easy combo mode in Tekken, which I think is pretty bad. So Street Fighter is a good implementation. Even simple in something like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was a decent enough implementation. These games, 3 of 4, are going to have no motion inputs. Confirmed 2XKO will be using special move buttons. Hunter x Hunter will be using special move buttons. Invincible Versus is still in active development, but from the information we've been given so far, this game will also be using special move buttons instead of using traditional motion input special moves. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls will be the only fighting game of these 4 tag fighters coming out within the next year that will still have motion inputs as its core gameplay mechanic for special moves. And I kind of want to talk about it. I don't know if the slow death, or I guess this is an extremely fast potential death of motion inputs, is a bad thing. Now, I could play devil's advocate and say that a lot of people got into fighting games and have been playing fighting games for a really long time, and that motion inputs feel core and integral to the way they've played fighting games for a very long time. And taking that away from them is awful when it comes to muscle memory and control of your character. But fighting game players that old can get used to any system. If you've been playing fighting games long enough that you can do a quarter circle off the top of your head, you can do a Z motion off the top of your head, you can do a half circle back off the top of your head, double quarter circle, etc., you will be fine without motion inputs. They may be more fun, maybe, but I think a lot of the fun from fighting games comes from outplaying another opponent and knowing that you made the right reads and made the right situations when it came to your combos, your damage routes, your throws, your Oki, your knockdowns, etc. I think those things are significantly more important, and removing a hurdle for some, right? People with like neurological issues or muscle issues can't really fathom the idea of a quarter circle, or their hands literally can't do it. Their hands cannot do in a reasonable speed a quarter circle motion, but I bet you they can press forward in special move, back in special move, down in special move, or up in special move, right? It feels better to broaden the game for them than it does to continue to keep fighting games inaccessible for the most part to those players. Now, you can call it accessibility for the sake of simplicity, but it's more that it's allowing access to the game for more players. If you're already really good at fighting games, you're going to be able to adjust. But if you've never been able to play a fighting game because motion inputs were such a foreign concept to you, We have tons of other fighting games that have existed without motion inputs or with the potential to turn off motion inputs already. Mortal Kombat does not inherently use normal motion inputs. You press directions, down and forward, forward, down and forward, back and forward, up and down and up, right? It doesn't use quarter circles, half circles, Z motions. And it has some pretty decent equivalents. I'd say forward, down, forward is an equivalent to a Z motion, and down, forward, and down, back are very close equivalents to quarter circle forward and quarter circle back. But you only need the 2 cardinal directions, which is significantly easier in some people's brains. There's even been very fun and shout out to Combo Rigger, extremely competitive fighting games that are on the Kusoge level, like the Dragon Ball Budokai series and the Naruto Clash of Ninja or Getaku Ninja Taisen series. And these have special move buttons. You have A and B, and then you have commands out of A and B, like forward A, back A, down B, forward B, akin to something like a Super Smash Brothers, except as an arena fighter, sort of 3D fighter mix kind of thing. So games like that, as old as Clash of Ninja, 2004, 2003, have had some modicum of success in a competitive circuit. It is a little anime kusoge. It's nothing super crazy, but that baseline has existed for a long time. You could even look at something along the lines of Tekken or Soul Calibur. Tekken doesn't have too many motion inputs. There's not a lot. And when you think of traditional Soul Calibur for a very long time, outside of characters like the Greeks and Taki, there wasn't too many motion inputs. Taki has quarter circle back because of possession. The Greeks have quarter circle back and quarter circle forward for their angel step and whatever the back step is called, I'm not sure. And then even Keelik with like front parry, right? These moves could easily be mapped to something else and the game would function basically the same as it does now. There's been tons of fighting games that have existed and have had competitive relevance and have been fun enough to justify their lack of motion inputs. You can even look at something as along the lines of a modern classic like Super Smash Bros. Melee. I can't really call Super Smash Bros. Melee a modern classic. It's very old, right? The Smash games, the platform fighters, as it were. I don't think there's a single platform fighter that's popular that uses motion inputs. And it's not that it wouldn't work, because they are on a 2D plane. It'd be very easy to get them to work, as you can see from Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. Characters like Ryu, Ken, Kazuya, and Terry use motion inputs. They 100% use them, but they're not necessary and integral for every single character on the roster. And I think that in itself, even though it's a platform fighter, proves enough that you can have a lot of depth and mastery to find in a fighting game without the idea of motion inputs. Nimpact is covering it by using multiple special move buttons. 2XKO is covering it by using multiple special move buttons. Same with Invincible Versus. The only game here that seems to have a baseline motion input first is going to be Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. Now, I'm not opposed to the option, but I don't think that we should make it the norm anymore. I think the norm, especially for a lot of these like heavier, fast-paced games where you're moving at the speed of light and you want to be able to control your character and do the cool thing without having to overthink, I think these easier combo routes and these easier special moves makes a lot more sense in games like this. Do I think that Street Fighter and KOF and Guilty Gear need to go no motion input? Maybe Guilty Gear is pretty fast, but Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and KOF and Fatal Fury need to go motion input? No. If they have the option for it, that's fine. Something along the lines of Granblue Fantasy Versus, how you have both options in the same game. A game like DNF Duel, you have both options in the same game. That will appease the hardcore and the old school players who want to continue to love fighting games and love motion input so much that fighting games would feel foreign to them without them. But then it also allows people who are new to the game and want games to be more accessible and easier to understand and play to be able to get into the game. Now, when doing that, I do think that we have to start realizing that it's time to get rid of the stigma behind easy inputs and simple controls, because it's not always easy for some people to control the games otherwise. Shaming people for their control choice is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. For a very long time, people were very mad, mostly scrubs, were very mad about modern players and modern play in Street Fighter 6. It's something that I hope to stop seeing with the growth of games that don't have special move inputs, that don't have motion inputs for special moves. I'm hoping that will also remove things like adding a restriction for someone who's in the simple controls or the modern controls or the smart controls, whatever you want to call them. I don't like the idea that the game Street Fighter 6 was balanced around modern, but if you play in modern, you take a damage cut for doing special moves the way they were designed if the game was designed around it. How much sense does it make to lose your damage and lose access to some special moves in some way, shape, or form? You lose access to some of the strengths of some of the special moves, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because if you have something that's quarter circle punch, quarter circle forward punch, and quarter circle forward kick, you only have one of those mapped to quarter circle forward and the 3 attack buttons. So the other one is only accessible by using the special move button. So that means you only have one version of that. Let's take someone like Kimberly, for example, who has the run or Vagabond Edge, right? She has a run, which is quarter circle forward kick, or she has Vagabond Edge, which is quarter circle forward punch. She only has access to one of those as more than a medium or a heavy, whichever they decided to put in. And the other one, she has access to all 3 versions. Doesn't that seem odd? It does, right? So the restriction, the logic behind designing a game around a new style of controls, a simpler style of controls, and then giving someone who's doing motion inputs more damage and more freedom feels like a really big restriction. If they took away the damage restriction and left the freedom of using multiple strengths of special moves, that's fine. But with these games, these new games, 2XKO, Invincible Versus, and Hunter x Hunter, being special move lists completely, and Marvel Tokon probably having some sort of a simple input, as far as I know, and then also having your normal commands, I hope they find a more nuanced system to keep everything balanced. I think Ultimate Marvel's Capcom 3 or Marvel's Capcom 3 did a pretty good job of this. There was certain special moves you would have access to, and you had access to like these cool auto combos when it came to the simple controls. But all of your combos always started with light, which means that they always start with lights. That means you're more than likely only gonna have low damage because of the fact you started with lights. You're not having low damage because the game arbitrarily nerfed your damage because you're using the simple controls. Your damage is nerfed because your damage cannot start with heavier or medium starters. Heavy or medium starters. Apologies. That's a significantly more nuanced system than what Street Fighter 6 has done, and I hope to see Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls implement something as good as that. I'd also like to see 2XKO, Invincible Versus, and Hunter x Hunter Impact appease the other side of the crowd and allow for motion inputs for special moves so that people will feel as if they still feel rewarded for all of the fighting game time they've put in. I don't want motion inputs to die, but I don't want the games to be held back from those who can't do them. So I would like to see more games with motionless inputs or special move commands instead of special move inputs. Is that better? This is just my take on what seems to be kind of a pretty quick killing of motion inputs. As somebody who's been playing fighting games for a really long time, I've enjoyed my fair share of Street Fighter, of Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur, even the Marvel vs. series. I love Tatsunoko Go versus Capcom, which is not Marvel vs. Oh, yeah, it's Capcom versus. It's not Marvel versus, right? I played some good old, Marvel Infinite. I wasn't a super big fan of 3, but I played a little bit of Marvel 3. I've been playing fighting games my whole life. And to see the type of fighting game that used to exist and made people happy maybe disappear would be really bad. But I also want to see the fighting game scene flourish and allow people who have not been able to play fighting games in a way they feel comfortable and in a way they feel powerful, because that's really what matters, finally come to fruition and allow them to do that. So if you ask me, I want games built around lack of motion inputs with the option to use them. I think that that's the best system, something along the lines of a DNF Duel, something along the lines of a Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, with no real restrictions on whether you use the normal input or the special input. There could be small incentives, small disincentivifications, like how you use more mana if you use your mana regen slower if you use the easy input versus the motion input in DNF Duel. I think that those are fine and fair systems, and it's probably the easiest way to balance them without making the simple controls feel too disproportionately imbalanced. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below about the quick killing of motion inputs for a lot of fighting games. Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think it's a good thing? Are you happy to see more games go motionless, go special move button instead? Do you miss the good old days? Do you want everyone to have to learn one frame links and extremely hard pretzel motions for every single fighting game? And if they don't, they're a bitch and they should get out of your genre. Leave it all in the comment section down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm hoping to get to 1,000 subscribers eventually so I can make that mucho dinero on YouTube. I've also even been thinking about live streaming directly to YouTube instead of Twitch, where currently that's where I record these talk segments and then post them to YouTube. So if you want to see the talk segments live, also come down to the Twitch stream. Anyways, it's been Beanie Thuggish talking about motion inputs and newer fighting games and their lack thereof. Some solutions. Signing out and saying peace.